Da 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 da!
It's me,
Josh is here. Josh is now learning how to shoot
Use a
in
camera.
Use a camera. How are you feeling
Well,
about this?
I mean, I know how to use a camera, but not the way that you use a camera.
And so Josh is my husband, for those of you who don't know, and I'm excited to bring him in. I mean, you guys have seen him in our travel vlogs and everything. The content of this YouTube channel is going to shift a little bit. Due to COVID, we can't travel anywhere. We can't do, I mean, a lot of our content was...
This is very different.
Yeah. A lot of our content was when Vera was living with us, who was our foreign exchange student. She's not with us anymore, so we're not making random videos on exposing her to hot dogs at Sheetz.
Hey, that was a thing.
It was a thing. What we are going to start doing is sharing some how-to videos, how to do photography. So a lot of people have asked me to do some little tutorials and stuff on how to use a DSLR camera, how to shoot in manual mode, and we just thought this is perfect because I needed to teach Josh, so you guys can kind of have a front row seat in our little teaching session, which should be real entertaining. First things first is, what do you need?
A camera.
Good! You passed the first test.
All right.
Okay.
Teachability. A lens.
Yes!
Really?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you need a camera body. That's what we call just this piece right here. And you need a lens, a camera lens.
Part.
So I shoot with a Canon 6D. It is a full frame camera, but really, to take good photos, really you just need a good lens. I built my business, built my business using a Canon Rebel, but I did invest in some really good lenses. When you're looking for a really good lens, look for a lens that has a low aperture. I'm gonna talk about aperture in a minute. But you're gonna wanna look for it. You're gonna be searching for a lens. So you might search Canon 50mm, and then it's gonna have f/. There's gonna be a number. That's your aperture. Yeah, your f-stop.
I know what f-stop is.
F-stop is aperture.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know what that means.
So the lower that number, the better. So if you can find a lens that's in the 1.4 to 2 range, that's gonna be super golden. And I recommend, can't do this 50mm lens. It has a 1.8 aperture, which is really good. So I suggest the 50mm because it's really lightweight. It's a great portrait lens and it's really affordable. It's only about $150. So if you're looking for a lens to get started with, I suggest the 50mm lens. They call it the Nifty 50 because it's really nifty. So Josh, there are 3 settings that are really important when shooting a manual. Okay. How many settings?
3.
3 settings. The first is your ISO. Some people say ISO, but I don't know. I've always...
ISO, let's see.
In search of. No. I actually don't know what it means.
Hang on.
ISO controls 2 things. Can you guess what one of them is? So here's a little spoiler alert. All 3 of these settings affect the light, but then they also control something in addition.
Okay.
So ISO affects your light, and it affects the grain that is in the photo.
Ooh, that's important.
Yeah, because you don't want a grainy photo.
No.
Yeah. When you set your ISO, you press this little button that says ISO.
Huh.
And then you scroll down. 100 is the lowest. And then my camera goes all the way up to 25,600.
Why?
I always suggest setting your ISO the first thing. So if we are going to shoot outside and it's a sunny day, I'm going to first set my ISO to 100, 200, something like that. If it's an overcast day and we're outside,
which is perfect,
which is great, then I might want to put that at 2 to 400.
Okay.
If we're shooting inside, maybe we're doing a newborn shoot or something, and there's lots of natural light, or maybe we're doing a little photo shoot right here. We're standing in front of a light.
There's a little bit of natural light.
Yeah. Then we might want to bring that number up to 600.
But you could take a photo and tell if it's too bright
Sure.
or not, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Set your ISO based off of what your current lighting situation is.
Okay.
If it's
perfect.
dark, set it high. If it's bright, set it low. Okay, second setting is your aperture.
Okay, f-stop.
Your f-stop.
Aperture, you got it.
Aperture, f-stop, same thing.
Does that affect lighting as well?
It does.
Okay.
So the lower your aperture is, the brighter your photo is going to be. That's why getting a lens that's like a 1.4, 1.8, that's why those are really great because you can shoot inside. You don't have to worry about low light as much.
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay, so the aperture not only affects the amount of light that comes into your camera, but it also affects the blur. So have you seen pictures before where like the subject is nice and like crisp and in focus, and then the background is super blurry?
Cool. So
okay,
cool.
Everybody loves that.
I like that.
It is really cool. And the way you achieve that is with a low aperture. So first thing when you get on a session, you're gonna adjust your ISO based off of your current lighting situation. Then you're going to adjust your aperture based off of how many people you're photographing.
Okay, so ISO, lighting situation.
Mm-hmm. And grain.
And grain, but based on lighting situation. Aperture based on the number of people involved.
Sure, yeah. So if you're taking a picture of one person
okay,
and you want a blurry background, put the aperture as low as you can, 1.4, 1.8, 2.0, something like that. They're going to be nice and in focus, and then the background's going to be blurry.
Okay.
But if you add another person into it and you keep your aperture low at like a 1.4,
the other person's going to be blurry too.
The other person's going to be not in focus.
I
So
see.
you have to adjust your aperture based off of how many people you're shooting.
Okay.
We're about to shoot a senior session this evening. We're going to keep our aperture low because it's one guy the whole time.
Yeah.
Really don't adjust that much if it's dark or bright. I don't really touch the aperture because I know I want it blurry in the background.
Okay.
Or if you just want more of the background, if you don't want just one thing in focus, if you want like a whole, like if I were to take a picture of our dining room, I'm not going to use a 1 point something because the flowers on our table will be in focus, but the rest of the room is going to be blurry, and that's not what we want. So then the last setting that you're going to adjust is your shutter speed. And
I knew that was coming at some point.
Yeah. So shutter speed does affect the light as well. The lower your shutter speed is, the brighter your photo is going to be. But the higher that it is, the darker it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But it also, if you have too low of a shutter speed, if you have a subject, like if we're photographing this kid riding his bike and our shutter speed
He's just going in a circle.
Yeah. If our shutter speed is low, then he's going to be blurry as he's riding. Because the shutter speed is how quickly the shutter closes, opens and closes. Yeah.
Okay.
So if it opens and closes super fast, then you're going to get that crisp, no movement kind of thing. But if you want that blur, like if you're taking a picture of a waterfall and you want it to look like it's like cascading and it's all like one thing, then you set it a really low shutter speed, which means the camera is literally like, it's like opening and closing. So it's capturing all of that motion during that time that it's open.
So we might have people here that are watching that are interested in a certain type of photography. Portrait, you're just standing still most of the time.
Most of the time,
maybe slowly moving or something like that. But then you've got I'm a sports fan. And so maybe somebody here is like, I want to be a sports photographer. And so I'm going to after COVID, go to a basketball game or something like that and try to get all the action on the court. It's football on the field, et cetera, et cetera. Or maybe we just have parents of teenagers and kids that are playing like youth soccer right now. And you're like, I really want a good picture of my kid.
Yeah.
So if it's sports and something fast moving, is it a faster shutter speed?
Yeah, so the shutter speed, what the shutter speed looks like on your camera, it's a 1/ and then a number. So I suggest if you're shooting portrait of just somebody who's generally standing and still, don't go any lower than 125. 1/125.
What is that?
So if it's lower, even though my my subject is standing still, I might move a little bit and then they're out of focus, just off. So I would suggest don't go any lower than 125 when you're photographing people. If you're photographing like a still object, you can go a little bit lower. But if you're doing like sports.
Or it could be like your dog or something.
Right.
Your dog's not going to stop for you.
Right, yeah. So basically, if your subject is going to move a little bit, bump that number up a little bit. If they're going to move a lot, keep bumping it up a lot. When you're getting ready to take a picture, so you're going to set your ISO. So we're inside of our house, but we're in front of a window. So I'm going to set it to like maybe 320. And then I'm going to take a picture of our flowers sitting on our table here. So I'm going to put it at 1.8 because it's one thing. It's not very big. So I'm going to do that.
It's not super dark here.
Right. So I have those two settings. So I'm going to put my camera up to take this picture. And there is a little exposure meter at the bottom of my screen. You can also see it right here. So look through at the flowers and see if you can see that exposure meter. So there is an exposure meter bar. This might not be a technical term.
Yeah,
but I'll put a little graphic of it here. Yeah. It goes -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. If your little exposure line is on the 0, that means you have like balanced exposure. Your photo's not too bright, it's not too dark.
It's right in the middle.
If it's on the negative side, it's gonna be a little darker. If it's on the positive side, it's gonna be a little bit brighter. Right. Now look at it. And so if you like it a little bit brighter, then you're going to bring your shutter speed down. So what I'm doing on a shoot is I am setting my ISO, my aperture, and then I'm looking at...
Sorry for the yawn.
So then I'm putting my camera up to my subject, and I'm looking at that little meter bar, and like right now it's a little bit brighter because the window's right behind me. So I'm gonna bring that up.
In front of you.
I'm gonna bring my shutter speed up a little bit, so I'm at 1/400, and then I'm gonna click, and then I'm gonna check it out, and
there we are. Wow.
So I always suggest when you are on your shoot, adjust your shutter speed so that it's at the correct exposure. Especially if you're just doing portrait photos. If you're having to adjust it and in order to get the correct exposure, you're at like 1/60, then I would suggest bump your shutter speed back up because you don't want a blurry photo. And then I go and I adjust my ISO. I'll bump my ISO up. ISO, aperture, then shutter speed can be really whatever you want it to be unless it's way too low.
And I'm guessing at the end of the day, like, especially because we're all getting started, myself included, Jacqueline's the pro here. I'm just learning. You can adjust one part of the setting, take a picture, see, play around with, see what you like, and start building on top of one another. Eventually, you'll get to a point, or at least my goal is to get to a point where I'm like, man, that looks good. But it's going to take me several.
So when I first started,
hundreds of pictures to figure it out.
When I first started, I carried a cheat sheet with me with like what to do if my photo is too dark.
That's not bad.
What to do if it's too bright. Now it's just kind of second nature. My fingers just kind of do think on their own, I guess. One important thing to remember, because I have messed up so many photos by not doing this, is when you're on a shoot, make sure you take a test shot and you see, is it too bright or is it too dark? Make your adjustments, and then if you're staying in the same spot, you should be fine for that series of shot, unless the sun comes out in full force.
Moves,
you might have to adjust. But even if we're taking a picture and even in this room, if I'm taking a picture of Josh and I'm standing from this way, the light is going to be different. But then if I move and I shoot from this way, it's dark. He's darker, and so make sure just always remember when you change your location or even just your angle, take a quick shot, see what your image looks like, and then keep going. Just always make sure you're checking when you're moving to a different spot, when you're changing your angle where the lighting could be a little bit off. You want to make sure that you're not taking a whole series of photos and you're like way overexposed or underexposed.
And don't feel bad about the cheat sheet. The fact is, it's a great move, because if you work at a fast food restaurant or a coffee joint or whatever, they usually have some kind of flip chart that reminds you how to make certain meals and do certain things. You have spreadsheets at office jobs that remind you of like an order of operations. Even in sports, again, I'm a sports guy, the quarterback has a wristband that has all the plays on there. I mean, that it's normal. So don't feel like you're not doing a professional. It's actually very professional to say, you know what, I don't have it all together. I'm still learning, but I'm going to look professional while I'm doing it.
Yeah, just doing that, and then picking up your camera and doing test shots at home. Get your husband or your kids outside and practice on them.
The amount of test shots.
Josh has done so many test shots, so now I'm going to be the test subject, I guess.
I guess so.
But anyways, that's kind of a quick little overview of the 3 main settings of manual mode that you want to make sure you're checking off in your head as you're preparing for a shoot.
ISO, aperture, shutter speed.
Yes.
Right.
So we are going to be coming back with you guys doing all sorts of videos like how to shoot in different kinds of lighting, whether it's really harsh light or soft light or shooting indoors.
We'll explain what that means too.
We're going to give you some behind the scenes of some of my photo shoots, how to pose girls, how to pose guys, how to pose kids, how to work with families, all kinds of stuff, some editing tips. So make sure if you found this video helpful, or if you just want to see Josh learn photography, make sure you subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss out, and make sure you give this video a quick little like. So,
High five.